Hello friends. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. December's first week in Upper New York State was usually harmless. Cold, yes, but not the sort of cold that made the news. At least, that's what I told myself while packing my suitcase, tossing in sweaters, jeans, a flask of bourbon I'd been saving, and a stack of mystery novels I'd been meaning to read for 2 years. My supervisor at the firm, gruff, perpetually irritated, and allergic to small talk, had practically kicked me out of the office after noticing I hadn't used a single vacation day in 14 months. "Go somewhere," he barked, "before you turn into a calculator with a pulse." He wasn't wrong. My life had become a loop. Office, apartment, cheap takeout, sleep, repeat. So when a colleague mentioned his cousin owned a winter cabin near Saranac Lake, tucked between the Adirondack peaks, I figured why not. A silent week away from spreadsheets sounded like therapy. I booked it without overthinking. That's my curse. I overthink everything except the things that matter. The cabin was 3 hours from Albany. By the time I reached the last stretch, a narrow road winding through bare trees and frozen marsh, I felt like I'd driven off the map. The GPS lost signal, and even the radio started playing static like a heartbeat. When I finally reached the cabin, I was surprised by how old it looked. Dark timber walls, a steep metal roof, a porch sagging slightly to the right. But it wasn't falling apart. It was just aged, like a place built before people cared about comfort, designed only to survive brutal winters. A handwritten note taped to the door welcomed me. Keys under the mat, woodpile behind the shed, generator instructions inside the binder. R. Halden. Simple. Practical. Very Adirondack. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of pine sap and something older, like old books sealed in a basement. The living room had a stone fireplace that looked like it could outlast a nuclear blast. The kitchen was small but functional. The bedroom had a thick quilt, obviously handmade. The bathroom pipes groaned like they were complaining about being woken. It was perfect. I spent the first 2 days decompressing the way stressed-out city people pretend to know how. Reading, wandering on trails, drinking coffee slowly instead of in frantic gulps. The silence was so heavy it felt like a blanket. No humming refrigerators, no traffic, no neighbors yelling at their dogs. Just the wind scraping along frozen branches and the occasional thump of snow falling from a pine limb. For the first time in ages, I wasn't anxious. Not yet, anyway. On the third morning, everything changed. The sky had turned into a single smear of steel gray. The kind of sky that didn't promise snow, it threatened it. I checked my phone near the window where reception flickered in and out like a dying light bulb. A weather alert flashed. Blizzard warning. Heavy snow. 40+ miles per hour gusts. Whiteout conditions expected by nightfall. I shrugged it off. It was winter. Storms happened, and the cabin felt sturdy enough to survive anything. Still, I prepped, dragged extra firewood inside, filled containers with water, and reread the generator instructions twice. The temperature had dropped sharply. The air burned my face when I opened the door. By 4 p.m., snowflakes as big as quarters were slamming sideways against the windows. By 5 p.m., the forest had vanished behind a thick white curtain. By 6:15 p.m., the power died. The cabin went completely dark, and the silence snapped in half. I lit a few candles, their dim orange glow barely denting the darkness. The fireplace helped, but shadows crawled across the walls like they were alive. My phone had zero service. Outside, the storm raged, with a sound like a freight train passing inches from the cabin. The windows rattled in their frames. Something metallic banged outside, probably a loose hinge or a branch hitting the shed. I decided to start the generator. I didn't want to sit in total darkness all night. When I opened the back door, the cold slapped me so hard my eyes watered. Snow was already past my calves. The wind clawed at my jacket, threatening to fling the door from my grip. I hunched forward, pushing through the snow toward the generator shed. And that's when I saw them. Footprints. Not mine. Fresh enough that the snow hadn't buried them completely yet, but already soft around the edges. They came from the tree line. They curved around the cabin. They didn't lead toward the front door. And they didn't lead away. I stared at them, my breath catching painfully in my throat. Someone had walked up to the cabin, within the last hour, during a blizzard that made visibility less than 10 feet. Someone was close, maybe still here. I wanted a rational explanation, any explanation, but nothing made sense. No neighbors lived within miles. No hikers would be insane enough to be out in that storm. I forced myself to start the generator anyway. The familiar hum came alive after a few tries, a small comfort in a growing nightmare. When I got back inside, I locked the door so fast I nearly jammed the bolt. But the worst part wasn't the footprints. It was the fact that there were no return tracks. Whoever made them never left. For the next hour, I tried to distract myself by reading near the fire, but my eyes kept drifting to the dark windows, expecting to see a face pressed against the glass. Every sound became amplified. The wind, the groaning timber, the ticking metal of the stove cooling. But then came a new sound. Click. Soft. Metallic. Too deliberate to be wind. I froze. It came from the rear hallway, the one leading to the bedroom and bathroom. I held my breath. Another sound followed. A creak. A floorboard complaining under weight. I knew that sound because I had stepped on that exact board several times. The third one from the bathroom door, the one with a small warp that gave away your presence every time. My entire body went cold. Someone was inside the cabin, not outside. Inside. And they were between me and the bedroom, where I'd left my pocket knife. Between me and the bathroom, where the small window could be pried open. Between me and the shadows, widening with every flicker of the candle. I grabbed the dullest of the kitchen knives, not because it would help, but because empty hands felt worse. The hallway lay in front of me, a strip of darkness broken only by the faintest spill of light from the candles. A second floorboard creaked, then breathing. Not mine. Slow, controlled, as if someone was trying not to be heard. Someone was standing just around the corner, maybe 6 feet away, watching, waiting. I pressed my back against the refrigerator, mind racing. If the person blocked the hallway, the only exit was the front door. But going out in the blizzard was almost certain death. The wind chill alone could freeze exposed skin in minutes. But staying meant something worse. I spotted a ceramic mug on the counter. A stupid plan took shape. The kind of plan you make when you know there are no good options left. I hurled the mug down the hallway with all the force I had. The crash was explosive. Wood, tile, porcelain, a startled shuffle, movement, the intruder reacting. I sprinted toward the front door. My socks slipped across the floor. I crashed into the coat rack, grabbed my jacket without putting it on, fumbled with the deadbolt, and yanked the door open. The storm swallowed me whole. Snow slashed my face like needles. The cold bit into my bones instantly. I couldn't see anything beyond a wall of white, but I forced my legs to move, plowing through knee-deep drifts. Behind me, the cabin door slammed open. Someone stumbled onto the porch. I didn't dare look back. I went by instinct, memory, panic. My hand hit metal, the hood of my car. My fingers were trembling too violently to grip anything, but somehow I jammed my arms into my coat sleeves and dug for the keys. The engine barely started. For a second, I thought God had abandoned me. Then the engine roared to life, coughing, struggling, but alive. I threw the car into reverse. The tires spun wildly, grinding, jerking, before catching traction. I saw him then, a silhouette standing near the tree line, tall, lean, face hidden by the storm, snow plastered to dark clothing, something metallic glinting in his hand. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I floored the gas. For 3 hours, I crawled at 10 miles per hour through whiteout conditions. The world outside looked like the inside of a snow globe, shaken by a giant with anger issues. Twice, I slid into ditches and thought it was over. Twice, I managed to rock the car free by sheer blind luck. Somewhere near midnight, I got a flicker of signal. One shaky bar. I called 911 with numb hands, barely able to press the screen. The dispatcher's voice was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. State troopers reached the cabin the next morning. The storm had ended, leaving behind an ocean of untouched snow. Except around the cabin. They found the bathroom window forced open from outside, muddy boot prints across the bedroom and hallway, a backpack shoved under the bed containing duct tape, rope, a hunting knife, a burner phone with no contacts, no sign of the man. Trooper Valdez, the officer who interviewed me, looked exhausted, like she'd seen this before. She told me there had been similar break-ins at remote winter cabins in the region the past 2 years. Most victims never heard the intruder. Most didn't get the chance I did. She didn't say the rest. But her silence said enough. I left the cabin that same day, checked into a hotel back in Albany, and slept with every light on for months. Even now, years later, a creaking floorboard in my apartment makes my entire chest tighten. Somewhere out there, the man who followed those footprints toward the cabin is still walking through winter woods, choosing doors, choosing nights, choosing storms. And I know, deep down, that if I had hesitated for even half a minute longer inside that hallway, I wouldn't be telling you any of this. My name is Nora Whitlow, and before last winter, I thought December was my safest month. I thought cold mornings and warm lights made people kinder. I thought the worst thing that could happen during the holidays was burning a batch of gingerbread or forgetting to mail cards. I don't think that anymore. The whole thing began the first Thursday of December, an ordinary morning on Ash Pine Drive, a quiet suburban road outside Spokane, Washington. I had just finished raking the last of the brittle maple leaves when Mrs. Hargrove, my elderly neighbor, stopped by with a blue tote bag and a cheerful wave. She was the one who told me about the community holiday donation roundup, a neighborhood toy and winter gear drive for kids in temporary housing. The county shelter had partnered with a few local volunteers to make it easier for people like us to donate without driving across the city. I was newly divorced, living alone at 27 for the first time in my life, and secretly grateful for anything that made me feel involved, useful, even in small ways. So of course I signed up. And just like that, the donation drive became my December project. By the second week of the month, I had already filled 2 reusable grocery bags with new blankets, small toys, mittens, and art sets I picked up from clearance aisles after work. It gave me purpose. Something to think about other than lawyer fees and the echoing silence of a house built for 2 people. The official pickup was scheduled for Sunday between 1 and 4 p.m., but he came on Saturday. He came early, and he wasn't supposed to. It was a bright, razor-cold morning, the kind where sunlight feels fake because the air could slice your fingers off. My breath fogged the kitchen windows as I brewed coffee and watched a pair of finches hop around the frozen feeder in my backyard. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon from the candle I'd lit. Outside, the neighborhood sounded peaceful. Distant laughter, a lawnmower someone was stubbornly using, even though frost coated everything. Around 11:30 a.m., I was kneeling near my fake tree, adjusting a crooked strand of lights, humming along to a playlist of old-school Christmas music. Louis Armstrong, Dean Martin, Perry Como. The classics. That's when I heard the knock. Soft. Polite. 3 taps. I wiped glitter from my hands and went to the front door. Through the frosted side glass, I saw the silhouette of someone tall, bundled in a winter jacket and wearing what looked like a red holiday beanie. At first, I thought it was Mrs. Hargrove again, maybe dropping off flyers. But when I opened the main door, leaving the storm door locked between us, it wasn't her. It was a man, maybe mid-30s. Average height, average build, a completely forgettable face. He was wearing a forest green bomber jacket, faded jeans, and a knitted red hat with a tiny white palm at the top, almost festive. He held a clipboard tucked under one arm and smiled when he saw me. A small, professional smile. The kind of smile delivery drivers use when they're running behind schedule. "Morning," he said, voice warm, friendly. "I'm with the Pine County Outreach Program. We're doing early rounds today for the community donation pickup." I blinked. Early rounds? I thought pickup is tomorrow. He nodded like he had explained this 50 times already. "Yes, ma'am. Weekend storms moving in sooner than expected. Roads may ice over by tonight. We're collecting from households that volunteered last week. Your name's on the list." He lifted the clipboard so I could see just the corner of a typed sheet. My stomach tightened slightly, but only slightly, because everything he said sounded plausible, normal, helpful even. I should have asked for identification. I should have stepped outside instead of letting him stand so close. But he felt so harmless, so ordinary, like a man who probably coached Little League on weekends. Behind him, down the street, I noticed a white cargo van, parked partially behind a line of pines. No decals, no logos, just a plain van with slightly fogged windows. Something about it pricked the back of my mind, but I brushed it away. Stupidly. "Hold on," I said, unlocking the storm door halfway. "I have the bags ready. Let me grab them." He smiled again, polite, professional. "Of course," he said. "I can wait inside if you'd like. Not trying to let all your heat out." His tone was casual, considerate, completely reasonable. So I stepped back and motioned him in. He stepped inside, wiping his shoes automatically on the mat. The warm smell of cinnamon filled the small entryway as he glanced around with what looked like appreciation. "This is a nice place," he said conversationally. "Quiet street. "Thank you," I replied, turning to grab the 2 heavy bags from the closet. "I just moved in earlier this year." He hummed, almost thoughtfully. I didn't notice it then, how the sound wasn't polite agreement, but evaluation. I bent down, wrapped my hands around the handles of the donation bags, and lifted them. And behind me, click. The soft, unmistakable click of the front door lock sliding into place. My stomach tightened. But still, I didn't panic. Not yet. Maybe he'd closed it against the cold. Maybe he was just being courteous. When I turned back around, bags in my hands, he wasn't smiling anymore. His entire demeanor had shifted. His shoulders squared, his expression flattened. His eyes, dead, pale eyes, locked onto mine with quiet, calculated detachment. The kind of look you give an object, not a person. Something cold slid down my spine. "Are you okay?" I asked. He didn't answer. He took one slow step toward me, and another. My heartbeat thudded against my ribs like a fist trying to punch its way out. "Sir?" My voice was too soft, too thin. "Can I help you with something?" That was when he spoke, his voice stripped of the warmth he'd used outside. "I've been watching this neighborhood," he said quietly. "A long time. People get careless this time of year." My hands loosened. The bags dropped, toys scattering across the carpet with muffled thuds. He didn't even glance at them. His eyes stayed on me. "You live alone," he said, like reading a fact off a chart. Knew that from day one. I stepped backward instinctively, my heel bumping into the couch. His lips twitched. Not a smile, but the ghost of one. "You leave your back door unlocked sometimes," he added. "Noticed that, too." A small sound escaped my throat, something between a gasp and a denial. What do you want?" He shrugged slightly. "Haven't decided yet." That sentence iced the air more than the weather outside. Behind him, on the kitchen counter, my phone sat, face up, 10 feet away. Maybe less. But he saw my eyes flick in that direction. Slowly, deliberately, he shook his head. "No," he murmured. "We're not doing that." He reached into his jacket. I braced for a weapon. A knife. A gun. Something sharp or metallic. But what he pulled out was somehow worse. A thick industrial roll of gray duct tape. He peeled the edge with his thumbnail, the adhesive ripping with a gritty sound that made the hair on my arm stand up. "Turn around," he said. "Hands behind your back." My legs felt like someone else's. Heavy. Locked. "No, I'm not." He sighed impatiently and took another step. "You're going to make this harder than it needs to be." His voice wasn't angry. That made it so much scarier. I looked at the kitchen, at the hallway, at the windows painted shut since the previous owners, at anything resembling a way out. And then I ran, not toward the door, not toward the kitchen. I ran down the hallway toward my bedroom, the only room in the house with a lock. I slammed the door behind me, turned the flimsy lock, stumbled backward so fast I almost tripped. He hit the door a second later, hard. The frame rattled. The mirror on the wall shuddered. I lunged for my nightstand, yanking the drawer so violently it came off its rails. My old phone, the one I'd replaced in July, was still plugged into the charger inside the drawer. I grabbed it and held the power button. Nothing. I held it again. Still nothing. Another slam against the door. The lock groaned. "Come on," I whispered fiercely at the phone. "Please, please!" A faint vibration, a flicker of light. The screen powered on. 2% battery. Enough. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers and pressed the phone to my ear. The operator answered immediately, but I cut her off in a panic. There's someone in my house. He broke in. He's trying to get in my bedroom. Please! Please!" She asked for my address. I gave it to her. Another crash. The door frame splintered. Wood cracked. "Officers are on their way," she said. "Stay with me, okay? Don't hang up. Help is 4 minutes out." 4 minutes. It felt like 4 hours. My eyes darted to the closet. Inside, in the far back corner, leaned a wooden baseball bat. My ex had left it behind when he moved out. I kept it for just in case, never expecting the case to actually arrive. I snatched it up, gripping it so tight my knuckles went white. The door shuddered again, cracked again. Then, with one final brutal slam, it burst open. He stood there panting slightly, sweat beading at his temples, the red knit hat crooked from the effort, his eyes locked on the bat in my hands. For a moment, silence. Thick, trembling, electric silence. Then he stepped forward, and I swung, not elegantly, not like the movies. Pure, desperate instinct. The bat smashed into his forearm as he raised it to block. A cracking sound. Bone or wood, I couldn't tell. He grunted loudly, staggering sideways. I swung again, hitting his shoulder this time. He dropped to one knee, grabbing his arm with a grimace. Behind my ear, the operator asked, "What's happening? Are you safe?" "Ma'am?" I could hardly breathe. He looked up at me, eyes burning now, not emotionless anymore, but something darker. Calculation, rage, regret. Then we both heard it. Sirens. Faint first, then louder, closer. His expression shifted instantly. He pushed to his feet, backing toward the doorway. "This isn't over," he muttered. Then he limped out of the room, down the hall, through the living room, out the back door. Gone. Police found his van 2 streets over, engine still warm, driver door open, keys on the floor. Inside they found duct tape, zip ties, gloves, a hunting knife, extra clothes, no ID, no documents. The detective said he used charity scams, utility uniforms, even fake delivery badges, whatever worked to get inside homes. He'd done this before, more than once. He was arrested 18 days later in central Idaho during a traffic stop for a broken taillight. He had warrants in 2 other states. Both involved women who lived alone. Both had disappeared. I testified at his trial the following June. Sat on a stiff wooden bench while he stared straight ahead as if I didn't exist. He got 28 years. I got a house full of upgraded locks, motion sensors, and nightmares that refuse to leave. But I'm alive. I remind myself of that every December when the cold returns. I'm alive. Because the door held long enough. Because the phone turned on. Because the sirens came in time. Because I fought. I've been in emergency medical services long enough to know that winter plays by its own rules. This December marked my 10th year on the job, and in that decade, I thought I'd handled just about every kind of emergency possible. Overdoses behind gas stations, pile-ups on icy highways, elderly patients who slipped in their driveways, the usual chaos that comes when cold weather meets human stubbornness. But nothing in those years, nothing, prepared me for what happened on the night of December 18th. My partner for that shift was Marc Hensley, a quiet guy from Nebraska who had been working EMS almost as long as I had. He wasn't easily rattled. I'd seen him treat gunshot victims without breaking a sweat. I'd seen him talk down drunk drivers twice his size. The man was steady, solid, dependable. We started our shift at 6 p.m. out of Station 14 in northern Minnesota, right off County Road 92. Snow had been falling since noon and wasn't supposed to stop until morning. The roads were covered in a thick crust of ice hidden under powder. The kind of night where the ambulance fishtails if you so much as blink wrong. By midnight, we had already handled a rollover on Highway 61, a respiratory distress call at a nursing home, a domestic assault victim missing 2 teeth, and a hypothermia case outside a bar. It was one of those nights, back-to-back runs with barely enough time to recheck supplies. When we finally pulled into Fairmont Regional Hospital to restock, I remember rubbing my hands together over the heater vents inside the cab. Even with gloves on, the cold was brutal. I was finishing up logging vitals when dispatch crackled over the radio. Station 14, respond to an unconscious male behind the Birchwood Crossing Outlet Mall. Caller reports adult male collapsed in snow. Unknown breathing status. Marc groaned the second he heard unconscious male and snow. Holiday season, office parties, drunk folks leaving bars thinking they can walk home in sub-zero wind chill. We saw it every single December. I keyed the radio. Copy that, dispatch. Station 14 en route. We pulled out of the hospital lot, our tires grinding through the snowpack, and started the 10-mile drive toward the mall. The streets were deserted except for the occasional plow truck dragging its heavy blade across the asphalt. By the time we reached Birchwood Crossing, it was 12:17 a.m. All the stores were closed. Only the tall parking lot lamps glowed, pale yellow lights that barely cut through the falling snow. Dispatch had said the man was behind the outlet center, near the dumpsters. So we drove around the back service road and parked next to a wall of metal trash bins. The moment I stepped out of the rig, the silence hit me. Not normal silence, storm silence. That thick, muffled quiet, where even your own footsteps sound wrong. Marc grabbed the jump bag. I took the airway kit. We walked toward the snowbank behind the dumpsters. And that's when we saw it. Not a person. Not a body. Just drag marks. 2 long grooves carved through the snow, maybe a foot apart, leading away from where dispatch claimed the unconscious man was. Footprints flanked both sides of the drag path, deep, fresh, crisp around the edges. Something about them immediately felt wrong. They were too neat, too straight, too deliberate. Marc focused his flashlight on the snow. Someone pulled him? He muttered. I nodded slowly. But the drag marks didn't lead toward the mall entrances. They led away, straight toward a narrow line of pines bordering the back of the property. I radioed dispatch. Greater than dispatch. No patient found. We have drag marks heading into the woods. Are you sure about the original call location? The operator came back after a pause. Affirmative. Caller used a prepaid cell. No callback number. Prepaid. No owner. No callback. That already put a pit in my stomach. Marc looked at me. We both knew it. This felt staged. Before we could even decide our next move, dispatch cut in again. Station 14, new report. Another unconscious person inside the maintenance building north of your position. Caller states they see your ambulance lights. Marc lowered his radio slowly. Someone's watching us. I didn't want to admit it, but yeah, that was exactly what it meant. The maintenance building they mentioned sat on the far edge of the outlet property. A squat concrete box used to store plow equipment and electrical units. I'd seen it before. It hadn't looked operational in years. Marc whispered, "We should wait for police." Dispatch responded instantly. All units tied up on a multi-vehicle pileup on I-94. Closest ETA is 25 to 30 minutes. Meaning, we were alone. Marc stayed outside to keep visual. I approached the maintenance building. Fresh footprints led straight to the door, only leading in, not out. The metal door was cracked open just enough to show darkness inside. I called out, "EMS! If you can hear me, call out!" Nothing. Just my own breath fogging the beam of my flashlight. I pushed the door open wider. The hinges groaned. Inside was colder than outside. My boots crunched over scattered gravel. The air smelled like rusted pipes and mold. I moved deeper, sweeping the light across the abandoned shelves. And then, footsteps. Not inside with me. Outside. Slow, crunching steps in the snow, followed by the heavy moan of the door swinging shut. I spun, running back toward the entrance, slipping over a pile of broken piping. I shoved through the door and saw the ambulance still there, lights flashing, engine running. But Marc? Gone. I yelled his name. No answer. But then I saw the footprints around the rig. Not one set, not two, 4, maybe 5. Circling the ambulance, walking around it, stopping at the cab door, stopping at the rear doors, closing in, all from the direction of the woods. My chest tightened. Panic hit my throat. I sprinted to the ambulance, slipping twice before climbing into the back. Marc was inside, crouched on the floor between the cabinets, holding trauma shears like a weapon. His face was ash white. The look in his eyes. I had never seen that man scared before, not once in our years together. He whispered in short bursts. They came out of the tree line. 3, maybe 4. Couldn't see their faces. They got close, too close. One tried the driver's door. They didn't talk, didn't run. Just walked around us, looking in the windows. He pointed at the footprints outside. And then they just turned around and walked back into the trees. I slammed the door shut and locked them. We're leaving. Now. Marc climbed into the front seat while I drove. I took the corner so fast the rig slid sideways before catching traction. For 2 miles, neither of us spoke. I kept watching the mirrors, expecting shadows to burst out of the snow behind us. Nothing. When I finally radioed dispatch to report false calls, the operator hesitated. False? Your unit shows 2 emergency pings from those coordinates. 2? We had only heard 1 original call and 1 follow-up, but dispatch's system showed 2 separate phones, both prepaid. 2 bait calls, 2 lures. When we got back to the station, we filed the mandatory incident report. A detective arrived around 3 a.m. Detective Rena Beckman, Ramsey County Criminal Investigations. She listened to everything. Didn't interrupt once. Then she pulled a stack of folders out of her bag. At least 15 reports. False emergency calls around the region. Lures that led to remote areas. Ambush attempts on firefighters and EMTs. Some responders had been assaulted. Others had gear stolen. 1 fire truck vanished for 3 days before being found abandoned in the woods. She said quietly, "You 2 are lucky. Whoever you encountered tonight. This wasn't their first attempt." Her voice was calm. Too calm. Like she already expected everything we described. She added, "The pattern is changing. Early incidents were just theft. But the more recent cases," she hesitated. "Zip ties, tape, blood traces on one scene. They're escalating." I felt something drop inside my stomach. I asked her, "What do they want? Drugs? The rig? Supplies?" She shook her head with a grim look. "Greater than we don't know." And that somehow made it worse. She showed us a prepaid phone recovered from a previous incident. Cash purchase. No prints. Signal bounced off 3 towers. Impossible to trace. The group, or whatever they were, was careful. Too careful. Like they knew exactly how first responders operated. We were short-staffed, so I finished the shift alone. Marc went home to his wife and 2 kids. I don't blame him. The rest of the night was quiet. Routine calls only. But every time we approached a location, I scanned the woods, looked for footprints, looked for motion, looked for figures standing still in the shadows. When the sun finally came up, I sat in my car outside the station for 20 minutes before I felt steady enough to drive home. 3 weeks later, Detective Beckman called. "The incident stopped," she said. "No more fake calls, no more ambush attempts." But she didn't sound relieved, just confused, like something was wrong with the silence. A few days later, I drove past Birchwood Crossing after another shift, just to see it in daylight. The maintenance building was still open. Same bent door, same rust stains, same forgotten structure no one cared enough to secure. I almost didn't stop. Almost drove right past, but something made me slow down. From the road, through the drifting snow, I saw them. Footprints, leading to the entrance. Fresh. Not old, melted, or warped. Fresh. As in hours old. Maybe minutes. I sat there gripping the steering wheel so hard it hurt. I told myself it was kids messing around, or homeless folks taking shelter. But I knew better. Those prints were too deliberate, too straight, too organized, just like the ones circling our ambulance that night. I didn't go inside, didn't check. I drove home and told myself I imagined it. But a part of me knows. They're still out there, whoever they are, whatever they want, waiting for the next snowstorm, the next isolated location, the next paramedics who walk into the dark thinking they're saving someone, waiting to finish what they started. The night it happened, I was tearing through Brookfall Galleria, a 3-story indoor mall in western Colorado, the kind that looks festive and cheerful on holiday flyers, but feels like a padded cell during Christmas week. I had worked a double shift at the animal shelter that day. 2 sick huskies, 1 emergency walk-in with a parvo scare, and then remembered, with a kind of nauseating clarity, that I had bought exactly 0 Christmas gifts. My cousin had texted that morning, "Don't forget the boys' gifts this year. They're excited. Don't fail their favorite big cousin again." She always added a passive-aggressive emoji to soften the blow, as if the wink somehow erased the guilt trip. So after work, I dragged myself to the mall. By the time I'd made it to the 3rd store, my hands were already burning from plastic bag handles digging into my fingers. By 9:40 p.m., most stores were pulling metal gates across their entrances. Holiday music echoed through the nearly empty corridors, slow, syrupy, mocking. Every speaker seemed to whisper the same thing. "You should have shopped earlier." I had 4 bags in one hand, 2 in the other. A set of dinosaur toys, a mini RC truck, a pair of winter gloves, a scented soap set, a novelty mug for a coworker, and something useless I bought out of desperation. A wooden cheese board with carved snowflakes. None of it felt worth the stress gnawing under my ribs, but I told myself it was fine. Just one more short walk to the exit, then the long trek to my car. Brookfall Galleria had a main parking structure, but when I arrived at 6 p.m., every spot had been taken. I circled twice, got honked at 4 times, and finally ended up parking in the South Ridge overflow lot, the place employees called the graveyard. Not because it was spooky, just because it was abandoned, neglected, and poorly lit. Only one of the overhead lights actually worked, flickering every few seconds like it was having its own holiday crisis. The others stood tall but dead, casting long stripes of darkness across the pavement. When I stepped outside through the south side exit, the moment was icy and quiet. My breath fogged white, drifting in the air like smoke signals. A sharp wind swept through the lot, stirring stray plastic cups and crumpled receipts under cars. The place was maybe 1/4 full now, rows of distant shapes under the dead bulbs. I shifted my bags, trying to ignore the uneasy weight in my stomach. The lot felt too quiet, too empty. The kind of silence you only notice when something is wrong. I was halfway through the first row when I noticed him. A man leaning casually against a dark gray sedan, 2 rows over. He had a phone pressed to his ear, head down, body relaxed. Perfectly normal. Except he wasn't facing the car. He was facing me. His eyes, shadowed but unmistakably locked onto me, followed every step I took. I told myself I was imagining things. Too much coffee, too much true crime, too much December stress. I forced myself to look away. The man looked like he could be early 40s, average build, wearing a forest green puffer jacket, jeans, and tan boots. Nothing unusual except the way he was positioned. Not a person waiting for a ride. Not someone on a genuine phone call. Just standing there, watching. I pretended to check my phone while subtly glancing at him again. He didn't move, didn't turn away, didn't pretend anymore. Just stared. A cold wave slid down my spine. I picked up my pace, cutting slightly to the left to put more distance between us. He moved too. Not immediately. He waited 5 seconds, maybe 6. But then he pushed off the sedan and started walking parallel to me, keeping a steady distance of around 40 feet. Still holding the phone, still watching me. I felt something inside me shift, instinct overriding logic. This was wrong. Very, very wrong. I tightened my grip on my bags and kept walking, telling myself casually, he could be going to his car. Calm down. But he wasn't looking at any car. He wasn't fumbling for keys. He wasn't breaking stride. He was matching mine. I swallowed a rising panic and pulled out my phone for real this time. I pretended to call someone. "Yeah, hey, I'm coming now," I said loudly. "Can you meet me? I'm almost at my car in the south lot." My voice cracked, betraying the fear crawling into it. He stopped walking. Just stopped. Between 2 trucks, phone now at his side, no pretense. He just watched. My heart hammered against my ribs as if trying to break free. My Subaru was about 60 feet ahead, sitting under a dead light pole whose bulb had burned out so long ago it had bird nests inside. I dug through my purse desperately for my keys when I heard it. A low, rumbling engine. I turned my head slightly. A white contractor-style van, no windows on the sides, slowly pulled out of a space near the far back row. No headlights, just a dark shape gliding across the pavement. It was moving toward me. Slow, controlled, predatory. My pulse spiked so violently that spots danced in my vision. I turned hard to the right, abandoning the straight path to my car, heading back toward the mall entrance. And the van changed direction too, adjusting, repositioning, intercepting. Every instinct inside me screamed, "Run!" Behind me, the first man started closing the distance too, his steps quicker, longer, more deliberate. They were working together. This wasn't paranoia. This was coordinated, planned, practiced. My breath tore out of me in sharp bursts as I sprinted across the asphalt. One of my bags split, spilling a box of chocolate truffles and a candle that shattered instantly, the glass echoing across the lot. I didn't care. I ran. The mall entrance I had exited through was now slowly being locked by an older black security guard in a navy blue uniform. Gray hair, sturdy build, keyring jingling as he worked. I screamed. Not words, not sentences, just pure panic ripping from my throat. He looked up sharply, startled, then alarmed. I waved my arms wildly. "Please, please, open it!" He froze for half a second, then shoved the door back open. Behind me, the van's brakes squealed, an ugly high-pitched sound, followed by the harsh crunch of tires reversing. I risked one glance. The van was backing away fast toward the far end of the lot. The man on foot had vanished, gone between rows, as if absorbed by the darkness. I burst through the doorway. The guard caught me as I stumbled over my own shoes. Whoa, what happened?" he asked, steady but urgent. I could barely breathe. They were chasing me," I gasped. "A man and a van. They were trying to get—" My words dissolved into shaking breaths. He eased me onto a bench inside the dim food court wing and radioed backup immediately. Most mall lights were already dimmed, turning the place into a haunted shell of garland and fake snow. I sat, clutching myself tightly, staring at the glass door, half expecting the van to slam into it. 2 officers showed up in under 15 minutes. Officer Garner, a tall woman with sandy hair tied back, and Officer Patel, younger, quieter, with sharp eyes. They listened to my story twice, writing notes, asking purposeful questions. What direction did he come from? Did you see the van headlights at any point? Did anyone else leave around the same time? I answered everything as best as my shaking voice allowed. Officer Garner told me I did the right thing. "You never go to your car," she said. "That's where they trap you." She explained quietly that coordinated stalker van approaches had been reported in multiple states. Sometimes trafficking rings, sometimes robbery crews, sometimes worse. My skin crawled with each word. They escorted me back outside with one cruiser in front and another behind, lights illuminating the lot. My spilled shopping bag still lay scattered across the pavement, items ruined, glittering with shattered glass. The stuffed toy I bought for my cousin's youngest lay face down in a slush puddle. I didn't stop to pick anything up. Officer Garner checked my Subaru's back seat before letting me in. "Old habit," she said when I looked at her. The gray sedan was gone. The white van was gone. Not a trace left. No fingerprints. No dropped items. No lingering headlights. If the security guard and officers hadn't witnessed the chase, I might have convinced myself I imagined the entire ordeal. I drove back home hyper-alert, convinced every pair of headlights behind me belonged to them. I took random turns, checked every mirror, pulled into a grocery store lot and waited until I felt safe. When I finally reached my apartment, I sat in my Subaru for 10 whole minutes, scanning the rows, breathing too fast, unable to open the door. My cousin called right then, asking, "Hey, did you get the gifts for the boys?" I broke down crying so violently I couldn't speak. She and her husband came over and stayed until morning. A detective called a week later. Cameras in the overflow lot had been broken for months, budget issues. Of course, cameras in the main lot saw only the van entering and leaving. License plates covered with mud. Intentional, deliberate, a professional tactic. No leads. Case open. But dead. I wasn't expecting closure, but the emptiness of it hollowed something inside me. I still can't walk alone in a parking lot after dark. I shop online now. Everything. Groceries included. When I have to go anywhere at night, my husband drives me. We married last autumn. He proposed on a hiking trail in the middle of the day. I couldn't have handled anything else. I bought pepper spray. I carry a personal alarm. I keep my keys threaded between my fingers like claws. People say I'm dramatic, that nothing actually happened, that maybe I misunderstood. They don't know the moment when your brain finally accepts the truth. You are prey. Someone chose you, and they almost succeeded. I think about the guard. His name badge read Lawrence Briggs, and I hope he knows he saved my life. And sometimes, late at night, when wind rattles my apartment windows, I think about the van, the man by the sedan, the silent coordination. And I wonder, did they find someone else after I got away? Were they out there the very next night? Are they out there now? Waiting, watching, choosing. December 24th, 2022. Christmas Eve. A night when most of America gathered around fireplaces, exchanged gifts, and filled their houses with warmth. I, instead, stood behind the counter of a 24-hour Quick Mart station off U.S. Route 36 in rural Ohio, watching snow pile against the gas pumps like rising white walls. While people my age were deep into families, careers, and holiday traditions, I was scanning barcodes, stocking shelves, and pretending I didn't notice the flickering lights overhead. Rent was due in a week. My Honda needed a new starter, and my bank account looked like a sick joke. The extra holiday shift pay, just $1 more per hour, felt like the difference between homelessness and survival. No one wanted the graveyard shift on Christmas Eve, especially during a snowstorm. But I needed the money. Desperately. The station sat miles away from the nearest small town, just a lonely outpost for truckers, travelers, and a people passing through the dark. And tonight, with snow swallowing the world outside, it felt even more cut off. The radio on the wall crackled with holiday music, though every song sounded warped, ghostly, stretched thin by terrible speakers. Silent Night played like a funeral hymn, the notes dragging slowly through the quiet store. By 11 p.m., the plows had stopped running, and the world outside the windows had turned into a white void. Visibility was maybe 10 feet. The parking lot lights barely glowed through the curtain of snow. Inside, the heater buzzed and rattled as if freezing to death. I kept scrolling through photos of my old classmates, some on vacation, some with kids, some celebrating with friends, feeling the kind of loneliness that sharpens into something painful. It made the store feel smaller, tighter, like the blizzard was squeezing the building inward. I checked the clock for the 100th time. 11:47 p.m., just 6 more hours. I held a cup of burnt coffee, staring at the highway, expecting maybe one car before sunrise. That's when I saw them. 2 headlights breaking through the blizzard, cutting across the snow like pale yellow eyes. A large SUV, dark, heavy, maybe a Tahoe, rolled into the lot and parked near the air pump, away from the overhead cameras. My skin crawled, but I didn't know why. I straightened behind the counter, grateful at least for the distraction. 2 figures stepped out of the SUV, thick winter coats, hoods up, heads down. Nothing unusual on a night like this. But something felt off. The door chimed as they pushed inside, bringing a gust of cold that made the lights flutter. "Welcome in," I said, the automatic greeting that left my mouth 100 times a shift. Neither replied. They stood there for a moment, dripping snow onto the tiles, their faces buried in shadows. Then they split up, one toward the refrigerated drinks, the other toward the chips and candy. I watched them on the security monitor. The guy in the snack aisle lifted items, turned them over, and put them back. He repeated this endlessly. Chips, candy bars, mints, like he wasn't shopping at all, like he was waiting. The other opened a fridge door, letting cold spill out, then closed it without taking anything. They weren't browsing. They weren't buying. They were killing time. A nervous pressure built in my chest. I glanced at the clock. 11:52 p.m. The snack aisle guy approached the counter with a single pack of gum. Still no face, no expression, just a hood and darkness. He placed it on the counter. That's when I noticed his hands. Latex gloves, pale hospital-style gloves, in a gas station, at midnight, during a snowstorm. My throat tightened. I looked at the other man. Latex gloves, too. The gum guy finally lifted his chin, and beneath the hood was a black ski mask. Eye holes, mouth hole, pale eyes staring out, unblinking. Not like a thief, more like a predator. He held my gaze with that dead gray stare long enough for my knees to weaken. Then he spoke, a calm, flat voice, almost bored. Walk to the door, lock it, flip the sign to closed. Do it slow, do it calm. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. The second man approached silently, revealing his own ski mask, and in his right hand, held low against his body. A pistol. Black. Cold. Used. He didn't point it at me. He didn't have to. I walked toward the door on legs that felt like they weren't mine. The snow outside erased everything. No road, no headlights, no world. Just white emptiness. The deadbolt clicked loudly. The closed sign swung on its plastic hook, and when I turned back, they were already behind the counter. Open the drawer, the gunman said. I pressed my code. The register slid open with maybe $180 inside. Neither looked at it. The unarmed one, gray eyes, leaned close. I smelled stale cigarettes through the holes in his mask. We're not here for that, he said. We're here for the safe. My heart sank. He tapped his cheap digital watch. 33 minutes until the timer unlocks. I froze. He pointed at the floor behind the counter. Sit. I sat, my back against the cigarette case, knees pulled up, trying not to shake. The gunman positioned himself near the window, hidden from sight, but able to watch the snow-covered lot. Gray eyes sat on my small employee stool, spinning lightly, humming along with the radio's warped Christmas music. The song Silver Bells played, distorted and eerie. It's Christmas time in the city, stretching like a taunt. Minutes crawled like hours. My fear was so sharp, it felt physical, like cold lodged in my spine. I thought of my mom, who'd be asleep by now, expecting my call in the morning. I wondered if I'd ever make that call. At 12:15, Gray Eyes spoke without looking at me. You work Monday through Friday, he said casually. Evenings, alone from 10 to 6. My stomach dropped. He continued, bored, listing details like reading from a script. The older guy leaves at 10 sharp. Police drive by usually around 2:10 a.m., sometimes 2:20. They never come inside unless a car's parked out front. My hands shook. We watched you for 9 days, he said. We know when the cash pickups happen. We know the safe delay. We know the patterns. He turned slightly. And we know no one is coming tonight. My breathing became shallow. He leaned forward, voice low. So relax, follow instructions, and you'll be home by sunrise. At 12:30, the safe beeped from the office. A sharp electronic chirp, so loud it made all three of us jump. Gray Eyes stood fast. Let's go. They pulled me to my feet, hard. Bruises would bloom there later. They flanked me as I walked to the back office. My hands shook so badly I couldn't grip the combination dial. I messed up the numbers once. The gun pressed cold against the back of my head. Instant focus. The lock clicked. Inside were stacks of 10s and 20s, maybe $4,000. Gray Eyes shoved me aside and stuffed everything into a duffel bag. 2 minutes later, he zipped it shut. I thought they'd leave. They didn't. Gray eyes stared at me through those pale mask holes. "You've seen too much," he said. "Not our faces, but our builds, our voices. Enough." My chest tightened. The gunman grabbed my wrist, dragging me toward the back door. Panic exploded in me. "Please, please, I won't say anything," I begged. "Just take it. Please, I have family, I have—" Gray eyes opened the door. Wind blasted inside. Snow swirled violently, stinging my face. "Everyone has family," he said. "Move." The storage area behind the gas station was dimly lit by one dying bulb above the door. Snow piled in thick drifts. The wind cut through my thin uniform like knives. Their SUV idled behind the dumpsters, engine running, exhaust drifting upward into the storm. That was when I knew. They weren't leaving me here. They were taking me somewhere darker, colder, quieter. Somewhere no one shovels until spring. My heartbeat turned into a pounding drum. The gunman was slightly behind me. Gray eyes walked ahead, reaching for the SUV door. For a few seconds, tiny, fragile seconds, neither had a clear line of sight on me. And something in me snapped. I ran, hard, fast, blind. I sprinted toward the front of the building, slipping, nearly falling, pushing myself forward through the snow. Behind me, shouts. Then, crack! A gunshot. Brick exploded beside my head. He was shooting to kill. I didn't turn back. I rounded the building corner, saw the highway, just barely, 2 headlights cutting through the storm. A pickup truck with a plow. I ran into the road, waving both arms like someone drowning in the ocean. The truck slowed. I threw myself in front of it. The driver, a large, older man with a gray beard, rolled the window down. "What the hell? Drive!" I shouted, voice breaking. "Please, please, drive!" He must have seen the terror on my face. He unlocked the door. I slid inside, and he hit the gas. I looked back. The SUV didn't follow, just snow. Darkness. Silence swallowing the quick mart behind us. Night shifts in the emergency department have a way of blending into each other, especially during the holidays. My 10th year as an ER nurse at St. Francis Memorial in Chicago had taught me that December could throw anything at us, and most nights were just a series of small, urgent disasters that left you exhausted, but alive. I had seen drunk drivers, cooking accidents from people who shouldn't have been deep-frying turkeys, and a spike in domestic injuries that nobody talks about during the holidays. But that week before Christmas in 2017 would turn out to be unlike anything I had experienced before. We were short-staffed. Half the nurses had requested the week off to be with family, leaving the rest of us running on vending machine snacks, cold coffee, and sheer adrenaline. I remember complaining to my co-worker Patrice, a wiry woman with sharp eyes and a dry sense of humor, about how my feet ached from endless rounds through the hallway. She laughed and told me to pace myself. "The weekend's coming," she said. "You'll see how it gets worse." Neither of us knew how right she was, though not in the way we expected. It was around 2 a.m. on Wednesday when I first noticed something off with the patient intake. A woman arrived with a nasty gash on her forehead and bruising along her left arm. She told the triage nurse she had slipped on ice outside her apartment building in the Lincoln Park area, a common story this time of year. I processed her paperwork and moved on, though something about her demeanor, flat, tense, felt strange. An hour later, another patient arrived. Different age, different background, but nearly identical injuries. A defensive bruise on the left forearm and a small cut on her face. She lived in the same neighborhood, near Ashland Avenue, in the old meatpacking district. When I asked what happened, she gave the same answer with a flat, emotionless tone. "I fell on the ice. Just want to go home." By 4 a.m., a young man stumbled in, early 20s, clearly intoxicated from a holiday office party. His split lip and scraped palms told me a different story. The bruising on his forearms wasn't consistent with falling on ice. It was defensive, the type you see when someone tries to protect themselves from an attack. When I asked him directly if someone had hurt him, he just stared at me blankly and repeated the same line about ice. His voice cracked, betraying fear he didn't want to admit. Finally, at 5:30 a.m., I was allowed a short break. I stepped outside the side door near the ambulance bay, the cold cutting through my thin scrubs. I rubbed my arms against the chill, watching my breath curl into small clouds in the darkness. That's when I noticed him. A man standing 30 feet from the ambulance entrance, completely still, hands tucked into the pockets of a dark, long coat. Not approaching, not pacing, just standing, watching. I brushed it off at first. Maybe he was waiting for someone. But there was something about the stillness that pressed on my chest like an invisible weight. After a few minutes, I went back inside, dismissing the unease as fatigue. The rest of the morning passed in the usual blur of paperwork and minor emergencies. The young man was discharged with wound care instructions, and the women from earlier had already left. I didn't think about the man outside again until nearly 10 a.m., when I saw the second woman sitting quietly in a plastic chair near the vending machines. She clutched her coat and purse, as if holding on to something tangible would protect her from what haunted her. Her pale face trembled. I approached and asked if she was okay. She looked up, her wide, terrified eyes locking with mine. Her fingers were ice cold even through my sleeve. She whispered that she couldn't go home. She had tried to leave after her discharge, walking toward the bus stop on Michigan Avenue, when she saw him. The same man, dark coat, always at a distance, silently following her. She tried hiding in a convenience store for 15 minutes, and when she emerged, he was still waiting. She had come back to the hospital because it was one of the few places with lights, cameras, and people. She was desperate, afraid, and ashamed to tell the truth. I reassured her and called Raymond, our head of security, a retired cop who treated every concern seriously. Raymond arrived quickly and listened to her story. He checked the security footage from the last few nights, and my stomach turned to ice as we watched the grainy clips. There he was, same figure, same dark coat, standing outside the ambulance bay, the main entrance, side doors. 4 nights in a row, always around midnight, pacing, watching, following people as they left alone. In one clip from 2 days prior, a woman in a cocktail dress exited the ER at 1 a.m. He followed her in parallel, never making a move that would attract attention. In another clip, the young man stumbled out, drunk, and the figure detached from the shadows, following him into the empty streets between dim street lamps. 11 instances over 4 nights. 11 people he had silently stalked. The police arrived around noon. 2 detectives, weary from holiday calls, reviewed the footage. The second woman, Iris, gave her statement. And finally, she admitted the truth. She had been grabbed from behind in an alley, dragged, and managed to escape. She told me earlier she had fallen on the ice because admitting the truth was too terrifying. I realized then how many other patients that week had done the same, lying to protect themselves from a man who had been tracking them silently in the darkness. The detectives traced him through traffic cameras and nearby businesses. He always disappeared into the maze of streets near Ashland Avenue, where abandoned meatpacking buildings, loading docks, and shadowed alleys made someone vanish in seconds. They found a sleeping bag and empty food containers in one building, a sign of habitation. But no fingerprints, no clues to his identity. After Christmas, he simply disappeared. No arrests, no confrontation, no explanation. But the fear lingered, not just for Iris, not just for the other 11, but for everyone who worked the night shifts. The man could be anywhere, always watching, always waiting for the next vulnerable person to leave alone. Even now, years later, I still work nights at St. Francis Memorial. I check the ambulance entrance every time I step outside. I scan the parking lot for the familiar figure in the dark coat. And every December, when ice-related injuries start coming in and patients hesitate before meeting my eyes, I ask the question twice. Are you telling me the truth? The hesitation that flickers across a patient's face is the part that never leaves me. The reminder that predators move silently. And sometimes, the only thing standing between you and them is luck, timing, and the presence of others. Some nights, when the halls are quiet and the fluorescent lights hum above, I swear I feel the weight of those gray, unblinking eyes, watching, waiting. Late that December, life had slowed to a quiet, almost dreamlike rhythm. I was renting an old farmhouse outside Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a place I'd taken while saving enough to move closer to town. It sat at the end of a narrow dirt road, flanked by open fields and a stretch of pine trees whose branches whispered like dry bones whenever the wind blew hard. I had been working remotely for a small logistics company, buried in year-end reports, keeping mostly to myself. The forecast warned of a massive blizzard sweeping across eastern Iowa, but winter storms were nothing new in that region. I stocked the pantry, charged my phone, and settled in, assuming the worst I'd face was boredom. The house had its quirks: thin walls, uneven floors, and an old heating system that groaned like a tired engine. But it had always felt familiar. That night, though, there was something different. The air inside felt strange, almost electric, as if the house itself had paused, listening for something I could not hear. By early evening, the wind had risen to a roaring rush, rattling the windows like loose teeth. Every so often, a dull thud echoed from the porch. I told myself it was just snow sliding off the roof or the wind toppling old furniture. But the rhythm of the noise was deliberate, too precise to be the storm. Curiosity got the better of me, and I walked to the kitchen window, expecting chaos. Snow lay heavy over the yard, smoothed into perfection by the wind. No tracks, no animals, nothing, except a single, fresh set of footprints leading straight to my back door. The prints were crisp, well-defined despite the storm, and they ended at the door with no path leading away. A chill ran through me. Before I could process, the lights flickered, and then went out completely. The furnace died mid-groan, and the refrigerator fell silent. The house seemed to inhale the quiet around me. The temperature dropped sharply, and the darkness inside felt almost tangible, pressing in from every corner. I grabbed the flashlight I kept near the stove and turned it on. Its narrow beam carved through the shadows, revealing familiar walls, furniture, and the uneven floor. At first, the house seemed normal. Then I heard it, A slow, measured sound, too deliberate to be the wind. Breathing. Not the gasping of someone running, but the quiet, controlled inhale of a person aware of being unseen. I froze, listening. The sound repeated, steady and purposeful, coming from deeper inside. My neighbor was miles away, the storm blocking any chance of help. Whoever had left the footprints outside hadn't gone back into the snow. Moving carefully, I advanced down the hallway, trying to silence my steps. Every creak of the floorboard seemed amplified, every shadow stretched like it had intention. The breathing stopped for a moment, and the silence was heavier than the storm itself. I tried to convince myself it was a trapped animal, a trick of the wind, but the cold dread creeping into my bones told me otherwise. I kept my phone's camera as a faint light and checked behind me with each step. The hallway appeared empty, just peeling wallpaper and crooked coat hooks. Still, the feeling of being watched intensified. Entering the living room, the air grew sharper. Curtains swayed despite closed windows, and even the old rocking chair in the corner seemed to watch me. My flashlight revealed nothing moving, yet I knew something was there, perfectly still, blending into the shadows. I edged back toward the kitchen. The breathing returned, faint, precise, almost experimental, as if someone were testing my reactions. My hand found the small utility knife I used for opening packages. Not much, but something to give me leverage, a small comfort against the unseen. Then came a sound from the attic, sharp, like a weight shifting. I pressed my back against the wall, training the flashlight on the kitchen doorway. Shadows twisted unnaturally. That's when I saw it, a faint outline near the pantry. A boot, barely visible, but unmistakable. Whoever it was trying to vanish into the darkness, standing still like a predator stalking its prey. My pulse raced. I didn't call out. The storm screamed outside, but inside the house, it was only the measured sound of someone waiting. I backed toward the staircase leading to the mudroom, hoping to create distance. The air grew colder still, my breath fogging in front of me. The flashlight flickered once, almost betraying my position, and the boot shifted slightly, confirming the presence of the intruder. The house felt impossibly small now. I considered fleeing into the storm, but the snow was waist-high, the wind a punishing wall. My only chance was inside, though every room seemed familiar and alien all at once. Reaching the mudroom, I shut and locked the door behind me. The small space was freezing, darker than the rest of the house, with only a faint blue glow filtering through the storm. I crouched behind a stack of firewood crates, flashlight aimed at the door. Hours passed with nothing but slow, methodical footsteps moving above me. The intruder was searching room by room, sure I hadn't gone far. The wind finally began to ease by dawn, and the house returned to silence, as if nothing had happened. When officers finally arrived, they found the back door lock broken from the inside. Footprints led away into the snow-covered field, untouched by wind, just like the ones that had led in. 2 days later, I packed up and never returned. That farmhouse, once a place of quiet retreat, became a memory haunted by the certainty of being watched. Even now, years later, every December, when snow piles up around the city, I think of that night. The storm, the footprints, the controlled breathing in the shadows. I know there are places where danger hides silently, waiting for the right moment. And sometimes, that moment is in the quiet hours of a winter night, when the world seems paused and vulnerable.